Well, welcome everybody. This is our fifth installment on our Wise Wellness Guild month. The entire month of May dedicated to the 8 pillars of full self wellness. And today we are discussing Fit for Career Growth with Krissy Grote. We talked about this. She goes by Kristel Grote in her day job, and she's an associate director of talent acquisition for the Americas at the Concentrix Corporation. And Krissy, thank you so much. I know I've been a guest on your podcast a couple of times, What the Fit podcast, and have really, really enjoyed that. I think that your experience of just, being a woman, growing in your career, and, trying to find purpose and meaning in the work that you do, I think is amazing and so crucial for all of us. And there's a lot of life lessons there, but also building this other brand as you're doing that, in What the Fit podcast, really truly being an entrepreneur and figuring out how to navigate the balance and all of that, I think is just the part that I really truly respect you so deeply for, because I think that it's a hustle, right? Like it's a really big, it's a lot of work to kind of manage and produce your own show and bringing in new fresh ideas to the table. I know you're growing rapidly and that's super cool. So we really appreciate the time today. Thank you so much, because there's a wealth of topics that we could talk about today, but this is one area where you're really an expert. And I think that especially this time in our lives, this has never been more relevant for things that we're going to need to think about as we're thinking about career growth, finding new roles, and how we can really just be fit with our own personal brand equity as we're thinking about what the next steps are. So thank you again for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those nice, sweet, kind words too. So I plan to do a PowerPoint, but I don't know about you guys. I spend a lot of my work day in PowerPoint, and I don't want this to feel like work for you or for me. I would rather just, have it be a conversation, which is what I love to do and what I get to put into practice every week with my podcast, like Stevie mentioned, What the Fit. So some of you may know me from that space where I talk to people in the health, wellness, mental, physical fitness area. So I'm excited to be here today, kind of breaking out of that mold and chatting about career wellness, which it's so tightly intertwined with all aspects of ourselves. So, if something feels off or is missing with work, it can show up in a lot of different ways in the rest of our lives. And I mentioned this in the intro, on average, we're spending about 1/3 of our life at work. And, I make the caveat, work is still work, even if you're doing it at home right now, right? Even if you're doing something you love. So, that looks like up to 90,000 hours of our lives. And so as we're having this conversation and this discussion, I'd love for you to really think about the question, is the work I'm doing now sustainable to support your wellness over the course of your life? And if the answer is yes, then that's amazing and wonderful, and very happy for you. And we're going to talk about how we can kind of optimize where we are currently with work. So, working from home, leading teams from home. So I think there'll definitely be value for you there. And, if you're thinking about making a change to what you're doing now or in the future, we'll talk about building the resume and social media, job searching, finding the right employer, all that good stuff. So as I mentioned, really want it to be a conversation. Please feel free, take yourself off mute, chime in with questions, comments. Stevie, you can kind of help me monitor the chat. I love, as I've been in these sessions before, just learning from everyone participating too, and hearing their ideas and just having this environment of learning from each other. So, I know Nori said she's at work listening. If you got shit to do this morning, feel free to pop into AirPods, fold some laundry, get your coffee, whatever it is. I want this to, totally be a good fit for you and what you need right now. So I would like to start off and just kind of know what you all do for work. So if you'd like to, pop it in the chat, I can see where we're all coming from. Maybe you're not working now, you're looking for something new. that's great. You're absolutely in the right place. Let's see what everyone's doing. Special event planner and project manager, that sounds really fun. Design manager at P&G. Seasoned sales professional, recently laid off. Sorry to hear about that. Office manager, commercial real estate, treasury management, family nurse practitioner. Quit my job 2 weeks ago. Holy shit, good for you. Executive coach and leadership consultant, awesome. You should talk to me too. Research at Christ Hospital and member retention with WWG, awesome. That's great. We have a really wide variety. That's wonderful. I hope that you guys will absolutely speak up. Wedding florist. Oh, I always felt like that would be such a lovely job. I mean, I'm sure like anything else, we fantasize, right, about what the jobs that other people have. I know it's definitely still work, but that seems like a fun thing to do. Okay, great. So before we kind of jump into the different topics, it's stressful, I can imagine. The wedding florist says it's stressful, definitely. Before we jump in, I think it's important for you all to understand what I do and why I'm the right person to help guide this conversation. And I love thinking about careers and the past that we have as a story, and really learning to kind of look at your career as a story and to tell it like a story, which we'll get into a little bit later when we think about interviewing for jobs. So I'm going to start what I do today and kind of go backwards. So like Stevie mentioned, I'm an associate director of talent acquisition at Concentrix. So those of you in Cincinnati, I think most of us are here in Cincinnati, might have known the company Convergys. So Convergys was purchased by Concentrix a couple years ago, and now is fully integrated as Concentrix. So Concentrix is a technology-enabled global business services company specializing in customer engagement and improving business performance. Now, what does that mean, right? It's a bunch of fancy words. Essentially, you can think of Concentrix as an outsourced provider for big household brands, names, companies in many different verticals: banking, healthcare, telecommunications. We're working with these big businesses, for example, Sirius XM Radio, to outsource the entire customer service and customer engagement function. So it operates like centers all over the world that are servicing this particular client. So you're calling a 1-800 number. Technically, you are speaking to a Concentrix employee that's supporting, your question about your Apple iPhone, or you're chatting with someone, or you're emailing with someone. It goes beyond what we kind of think of as like a call center now. Especially call centers are kind of on their way out. We're looking a lot more towards AI, content moderation. So, talking to the TikToks of the world, the YouTubes of the world, and looking at that kind of different business. So my team is responsible for hiring all of our executive and leadership talent across North America and Latin America. We're a massive global company. We have 230,000 employees all over the world. So I manage a team of about 20 different recruiters, varying in experience levels. Last year, my team hired about 1,300 people in Latin America and a little over 1,000 in North America. So lots of hires, lots of interviews, lots of resume review, lots of meeting with hiring managers to see if we're getting the right fit for them. So how did I get here? I didn't at all think that I would be in this type of work if you would have asked me at all through college. I graduated from Miami University with a degree in strategic communication, which is really just Miami's fancy way of saying public relations. But really, throughout my whole time at Miami, I was really just thinking about going to grad school. So my path looked like preparing for the GRE, writing essays, meeting with professors for recommendations. I didn't go to a single career fair. I really didn't have much of a professional resume. I didn't really even know like what people did in the workforce. I'm first generation going to college for my family. Most of my family worked in hospitality, restaurant industry. So I'm like, it seems to me to stay safe, I should just keep going to school because I don't know what else I'm going to do. So I enrolled to go to George Washington University in DC for a master's of public relations. When I graduated Miami, I was enrolled, ready to go, lease signed, and I took my first trip to Colorado. I went out to Denver and then spent some time in Vail. So it was a pretty long trip. It was about 3 weeks. And it was the first time, that was definitely the farthest away from home I'd been, and my first time, going towards the west and like seeing the Rocky Mountains. And I think just this kind of breakout of being away from what I'm used to and gaining this new experience, I had the realization that this is not a smart move for me to incur a ton of debt going to the most expensive grad school in the country for a master's degree that I truly don't need to work. If I wanted to work in public relations, I don't need a master's degree. It's not a law school, it's not med school. This is something that I was able to do some internal reflection and recognize you're not going because you want to keep learning. You're going because you're scared that you don't know how to find a real job. So I took a couple days, I got back home and, made the decision I wasn't going to go. So I had to, all the administrative work of canceling classes and lease and all that. And it took a couple of days of just like crying alone in my grandma's basement, which is where I was living at the time, and realized I can't stay in Canton, Ohio. Gotta go do something. So I was talking to a friend who had just gotten a job at Ernst & Young, accounting job. So they have a pretty strict recruiting process. You go through, series of steps for the selection process. And he mentioned, you should look into recruiting. I was like, what does a recruiter do? I don't know. He's like, well, maybe just start with HR. So I'm like, okay, I have nothing else to start from. So that's what I'm going to do. So I started looking for jobs in HR. I was really lucky enough to come across an entry-level HR position with a company called Group Management Services in Columbus. They're a professional employer organization. So they are somewhat, you can think of like outsourcing the HR function for small to mid-sized businesses that want to focus on their core business. They would hire GMS on to say, hey, you're going to do my payroll. You're going to handle my employee handbook because I'm a landscaping company and I know how to landscape. So it was a great entry-level job with HR because I got to see all the aspects, employee relations, benefits. I got to do some recruiting, health and safety. And when I learned from that role was that I really did love the recruiting piece the most. So when I was looking for my next role, I was going to move down here to Cincinnati, saw a Facebook post that Total Quality Logistics, most people in Cincinnati have heard of TQL, they were hiring for a campus recruiter. And it was truly like the most perfect job for someone that's recently out of college. I owned different campuses. I owned Vanderbilt, University of Tennessee, Miami, OU, and I would travel around and I would try to recruit recent college grads to come work for TQL in that entry-level sales program. From there, I stayed about a year, but I did have a boss that really transformed my career and took me on as a mentee, and for the first time gave me this idea that she believed in what I could do with my career, and she was really invested in my development. So she was hired to Convergys at the time, hired there to essentially build the in-house recruiting team. Before it had been outsourced, they wanted to bring everything back in-house and service everyone. So she brought me over with her, which really was kind of the catapult of my corporate career, and where I found, okay, this isn't just a job I want to do anymore, or this isn't just something that I'm using to pay my bills. This is how I see the rest of my life going, which I'm very grateful for. So started with Convergys in 2013, kind of made my way up the ranks with a big focus in my career on implementing and building global processes. Like I mentioned, we started the team. I'm now one of the only founding team members remaining at, again, what is Concentrix. So started managing some regions in Latin America. That's where I got my first management experience. From there, expanded to overseeing the Americas, both North America and Latin America. Late 2018, Concentrix bought Convergys. So that was a big toss up with reorgs, and was back to just Latin America with an expanded scope. And then recently, just in November, am now overseeing both North America and Latin America, still in talent acquisition. So most of my career has been early HR, but predominantly talent acquisition and process and tool optimization. So that kind of brings us to where we are today. So when thinking about, what I wanted to talk about and where people would get the most value, because we can do Google searches, right? Resume tips, how to interview for a job, how to find a job. And I was, just really wanted to kind of dig into to share some personal experiences and some storytelling that I would hope that would resonate with everyone. So one of the questions that I want to start with asking is, are you happy in your job right now? And that's not an easy, simple, straightforward answer, right? So I think it's important to really take a look in some self-awareness exercises that we'll go through to help make that decision. So in the chat, I'd like to see if you could rate your job satisfaction overall on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 is I'm miserable every single day of my life. I dread going to work every day. 10 is highly, highly satisfied. Maybe it's not always rainbows and butterflies, but for the vast majority of the time, like, I'm very happy. So let's see what we got. 10, amazing. 7, good. 9, 8, 3 at the former. 2, okay. 9. Ready for a change, 4 to 5, 4 at a former job. I really appreciate you guys being honest and sharing too. And sometimes just to like type out that number for your own self can bring up a lot. 8. Oh, last year was a 1. Oh, it's a terrible place to be. Now a 10. Great, that's amazing. Yeah, and I'll share too, I guess. If I were to answer it right now, I would say that I'm probably at a 6 or a 7. I would say that's probably about where I am. And I think it's important for us to do these evaluations and pretty regularly, because as we know, just with life, there's an ebb and flow when it comes to work. And I say, no matter who you are, what position you hold, you don't always love your job 100% of the time or feel tremendously fulfilled by it. And it's, it might be an unpopular opinion, but I kind of think that that's okay. And there'll be seasons of your life where you're going through the motions a little bit, waiting for the next wave of inspiration to hit. And, I think that's okay. And but to kind of get to that place to make the decision, is this just kind of a downward slope with how I'm feeling, or is it time to make a change? I will say too, in our current climate, don't let the COVID stress cloud your judgment right now. So I saw this week 88% of workers that reported experience moderate to extreme stress over the past 4 to 6 weeks. So if it feels extra hard right now, it doesn't necessarily mean, right, that we need to make a change. I've been really trying to talk more about work to my friends. And it's something that I've been reluctant to do because I think no one wants to hear about work. No one understands the small things going on or the politics. But now that a lot of us are working from home and we're not interacting with our coworkers on a regular basis, where we get to like do that venting, we like get to get it out by someone who understands. If we're missing that piece, I think I'm working on myself to kind of get over it with talking to a friend about it. And I know if I'm thinking about me, I would want my friend to tell me about work. Yes, maybe I don't understand every nuance, or I don't get why that email would have pissed that person off, but I still want to be there for a friend. So I think practicing getting it out there, if it's not even to someone that really understands, I think that will help us if we're feeling just like a little extra pent up about our work stress, and that it might help with kind of getting rid of some of those stressful, anxious feelings. At the end of the day, you need to trust your gut, right? You know better than anyone else if this feels like, okay, it's not just a COVID thing. I've been feeling this for a really long time. It's something I need to make a change. You know that better than anything, better than anyone. So one of the things that I've started doing to kind of help me, because I have not always been at this 6 or 7 that I am right now. Earlier in the year, towards the end of last year, I was at a really terrible place with work. I felt very trapped in that I was working all the time. I was feeling super burnout, really not fulfilled, but felt kind of trapped in this way of like, I don't even have time to look for a new job, to find something else. And then of course that fear of like, well, what if I find something else and it's even worse than what I'm going through right now, right? I feel like humans are always going to take the thing that they know that they hate versus the thing that they could potentially hate or could potentially love. So what I've started doing is keeping a work journal. So we do this in our regular lives, right? Maybe we have gratitude journals, or just brain dumps that we do with life. But I feel like I had always kept my work separate. I'm like, well, I want to feel at peace with my life. So I'm writing about my days, and I'm writing about, again, what I'm thankful for might not have anything to do with work. So trying to focus on that. And if it's just even quick things, but more so what I'm doing is using a calendar, and to have a visual of day by day, was it an X on the calendar day or was it an O on the calendar day? An X on the calendar day means like, this day was terrible. Like it didn't get better. It was all around bad. At the end of the workday, I can say, yes, for sure, this is an X. And O was like, okay, no, we got through it. Maybe there was some annoyances. I feel like, of course, it's work. Of course, there's going to be some, but overall, I can say no, O day. And then to see, like, at the end of a month, a visual representation. Did you have 2 or 3 X days that stood out in your mind as saying, oh my God, this was the worst work month? Or when you take a look at that calendar, you can see, okay, it was just a couple days, and who knows what else was going on with that, and it may just be work. But let's say, okay, for certain, I got to get out of this situation, not good. We're going to move forward. I got to start looking for something different. So like I mentioned, tons of advice out there. I think that you can Google things. Career Contessa, I'm going to put it in the chat right here. This is like one of my favorite resources for all things career and job searching. Has anyone heard of the Career Contessa website before? Yeah, Stevie's shaking her head.
Yeah, it's really wonderful.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so it's a great resource if you're looking for some tangible pieces to read. But I think that the most basic starting point has always been, is still currently, the resume. And now we can kind of also tack in social media. So when we think about resume tips, I will say, as a recruiter, when I'm reviewing applications, when I'm reviewing a resume, I am spending maybe a total of 15 seconds looking at that document for me to make a decision. Yes, I'm moving forward with an initial interview, or no, I'm not. And so what I'm looking at is your past job experience, more specifically, the titles of your past job experience. So I say really make those stand out, make those easy for someone to see, and absolutely include a summary before we're getting to any of the career experience. Use words and phrases from the job description that you're applying to. Pull them out for sure. I mean, obviously you don't want to use complete sentences, but I'll say this, like, you need to be truthful and honest in the jobs you've performed, in the dates and the companies. Absolutely. All those things can be verified. But I say be ruthless about getting the interview, because I think personally a resume tells 5 to 10% of your true career experience. What you need is you need to get that interview. You need to get the first initial conversation with someone. And to do that, you know, like pull out those job descriptions. I'm fine with amending titles too, not necessarily the levels of titles, but like how they're worded, because it's so arbitrary, you know, like talent, we call it talent acquisition in my company. Someone else is going to call it corporate recruiting. Someone's going to call it executive search. You know, it doesn't matter. Really, we just, you know, you got to be kind of tricky in thinking about how does this company that I'm applying for, how do they take a look at what that job means to them through the job description, and then just tailor away, cut and paste away. I would pause. Any, you know, questions about resume stuff? I think too, when we're thinking about prepping for an interview, the most important thing you can do is practice telling your career story, and think about 1 to 2 loudest, proudest accomplishments in each of those roles that you can talk to and highlight on as you're telling your career story, and make it just like, you know, it has a beginning, a middle, an end. We throw in some metaphors, some anecdotes, some comic relief, because really what that, you know, that initial interview with a recruiter, perhaps with an HR person, maybe it's the hiring manager, and especially now as we're doing phone, video, like what they're looking for is can you communicate? Can you communicate well? And storytelling will help bring that out. The technical pieces, you do that every day, right? You know what that is. If you're getting into a new field, then we need to be thinking about, okay, how does my career story play into where I'm going, where I want to go in the future? Previous owner of a business for a decade. Is previous owner of a business for a decade a positive or a negative? I mean, I guess I would say what job are you looking to apply for going forward? I personally don't see how it could be a negative at all. To demonstrate that you've owned and ran a business for 10 years, that seems great. But I think it would just depend on, you know, what you're looking for specifically.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Sorry. I didn't know. It's always hard manners on virtual, you know, because you never know, like I interrupt people all the time. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
No, you're so good.
Early experience, like fresh out of college, non-relevant,
Yeah.
like, but it's, you know, good part. Like, so I'm 37, right? And I spent like a good 7 years of my beginning career doing something that's totally has nothing to do with what I have been shaping my career to be. It seems just like arbitrary to have it on my resume and the things that I'm now that at the level I am. So like, how do you peel those off? Like, what does that look like?
I would probably I would include like the title and the company, and then just don't have any description behind it. Cause we want to show that you were still working during that time. But I don't think you need to go into a lot of detail on it.
Cool. Thank you.
That's what I would say. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm older than 37, so I have a few more jobs on my resume, and I've just recently highlighted the last job that I had, which I was laid off from, and the 2 jobs below that, which were several years, 10-year, 12-year spans of time. My resume is now 2 pages. Originally, when I created it and put all that information, it was 4. So I knew I had to narrow it down. So is it your recommendation?
I like that
I stay at the 2 and talk about the other ones in person, or? Yeah.
I because your experience at those other companies has been so long, and it shows that you have those years of experience for your next job. I think in your summary, you could call out 20 years experience doing XYZ or something like that. Where no, I don't think that you need to include the other ones in your situation. I think it brings up a good point too about resume length. I think we kind of have this traditional old school thought, right? Resumes can't be longer than a page. And that makes sense when we were handing paper copies of resumes to people. You don't want them going through a book, but now everything a recruiter is doing is digital online. So if it's 2 pages, if it even flows to a 3rd page, it's not really that big of a deal because, you know, we're just going through and looking. Now, you know, obviously I think to keep it, again, depending on how many years of experience you've had, depending on the jobs, if you're running into a 3rd, I wouldn't fret over it. You know, I wouldn't say agonize about taking things away because we're just scrolling anyway. So it's okay.
One other
good point.
question.
Yeah. Good.
Education. Certainly the year I graduated is a few years ago. How important is that graduation year on a resume?
Yeah, I would say not important.
Okay.
No,
okay.
I would. Yeah, I don't have mine on there at all.
My degree is not even relevant to what I'm doing. I have a degree in interior design, and my job is in sales. So originally it was important, but it's not as important.
Yeah, I would say you could leave the degree off for sure. It's okay.
Okay.
And particularly the year. I'm a fan of taking the year of graduation off for anyone that's not just directly out of college anyways, because it can go both ways, right? Someone can say, oh, this person's only been graduated or this person's been, you know, it's just like, we don't need to know.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Thanks for chiming in with the questions. Anyone else?
I just want to make a comment that I think a great follow-up session would be working on your career story. I think that narrative, I'm like super creative and I love the story arc idea. And I think that would be like a really, really great workshop to do, because I think even when you're giving, if you're speaking to somebody and you're like, oh, like, tell me about your career journey, like even verbalizing and saying it, not in a interview process, but more of like, if I'm getting ready to speak or something, I would love to get that to be, I'm not known for my brevity is what I would say. Yeah. So it's really great for me to get it down to a smaller format.
Right. And that it's meaningful, right? We think about the whole idea of a story, right? It should convey something, you take away something from it. And so that's what I want you to think about with your career too. And it might change depending on the job you're interviewing for. You know, I recently went through an interview process with a company, and I knew from the recruiter that had reached out to me telling me about this job that they were really looking for someone with, you know, process-driven experience, developing process, implementing process. And that's, you know, half of my career. I kind of think of my career into 2 parts: the talent acquisition, the actual recruiting part, and then this process adoption, this tool, this analytics part. And so when I was telling my career story to them, I really highlighted my process experience, because I knew that was that's what they wanted to hear. So they have some different versions too.
I have one other question, and I don't mean to take over this, but this is awesome.
Take it over.
In the company I work for, it was a Berkshire Hathaway company, we did not use the buzzwords that are used in the bigger world. Berkshire Hathaway is very traditional, yet very progressive in so many ways. But we didn't use a lot of the words that I'm seeing on LinkedIn and so forth. And that's concerning to me, that I'm not going to be speaking I'm saying the same thing, but not in the language that recruiters are used to hearing. So is there a source? Is there something out there that I can look at to get my story?
You set me up perfectly for what I was going to talk about next. So I appreciate that.
All right.
We can kind of get into LinkedIn, and really we think of, or I like to think of LinkedIn as like, it's your public resume. And recruiters, when they're searching on LinkedIn, so we have every recruiter on my team, I have a LinkedIn recruiter license, which that allows me to search on LinkedIn to see anyone's LinkedIn profile, full profile, whether we are connected or not. And how recruiters are doing searches are by keywords. I mean, we can also search by a location, we can search by company, education, tons of things. But the most common and the most effective way for us to find people is to use keywords. When I'm talking to my recruiters about finding candidates for a specific role, the first thing I tell them to do or suggest that they do is look at the job description and pull out keywords from the job description and search for those to find candidates on LinkedIn. So again, if you're looking at, a couple job descriptions over time, pull out those keywords that you see the companies using, but also visit the LinkedIn profiles of people that are in the job right now and pull phrases, short phrases, pull keywords from their LinkedIn profile and use it in your summary. So again, like we think of the resume summary, the LinkedIn recruiter summary is really your chance to just utilize those keywords. You want to make yourself discoverable. You want to kind of increase your searchability factor on LinkedIn. Similar to how we think of social media with hashtags, you can think of LinkedIn with using some of these keywords. So this summary of your LinkedIn profile, it can include bullets, like has experience or specializes in or whatever, and bullet out those keywords that you find. And so then when a recruiter is looking for them, like your profile is going to be at the top of the pack with all those keywords. So I think if you know someone in the role currently, that's really helpful to take a look at their LinkedIn profile. A lot of the times, if you're searching for jobs on LinkedIn, they will sometimes list like a recruiter, and they'll tell you if it's a company recruiter, if it's a recruiter for the company, if it's a an outside recruiter. But you can also do searches on your own, without a LinkedIn recruiter license, to look at the people that are working for that company. And it may take some digging, right? You need to really get your stalking skills out to go through and maybe find some people if you don't know anyone at the company currently. But I think that's a good way, is to kind of take a look what other people in the field or in that job specifically that you're looking for, how do they have their LinkedIn profile set up? And as always, keep it up to date. I think, maybe we can get in a habit of forgetting to update or letting it go by, especially if we're maybe not actively looking. But you never know when a good opportunity could, a recruiter could reach out to you about something that you didn't know was available. I think that some of my goal, I set this goal when I first started working in talent acquisition, was that I would never apply for another job again. That I wanted it to be that people were, any new opportunity that I took on, it was because someone was reaching out to me that they wanted me to come work for them. So, I mean, that's a lot of, keeping a network going and performing well in your current job, of course. And I think that it's just a testament about keep the socials up to date, keep your networks up to date, ask for recommendations of past supervisors, past bosses. Yes, Alexa says keeping a resume up to date is also important for extended career opportunities like speaking engagements, for sure. I know, but it's something you never think about. I mean, I'm good about my LinkedIn. That's like the first thing that I'll go to do. But then, I was in early conversations with a company that had reached out looking for a head of global talent, and they were like, oh, well, can you meet with this person tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, of course. And then they're like, okay, send over your resume. And I'm like, shit, I haven't updated my resume for a year. So I had to like scramble to do that at the end, which is, didn't take me incredibly long. But I think it's kind of like when you're thinking about finding a doctor, like you don't want to find a doctor when you're sick. You don't want to update your resume when you're like scrambling for that interview. So if you can think about updating it, then
yeah, I have
good habit.
When I've been approached for speaking engagements, that they'll say like something like, oh my gosh, I'm like, it's losing me. you know, where you say that little blurb about yourself that they post on the website. I'm like, well,
Sure, like a bio, yeah.
your bio. Yeah. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
crap, I don't have a bio. Like, and we need it today. Website's going up. And so like, I found that if I keep my CV updated, I can like generally pick out, or if I have that career story. But now that's another thing that I like have ready and waiting that I never thought of before. Because, you know, when I was first approached for a speaking engagement, I was like, yeah, this is cool. Let's do it. And they're like, have all these professional things you're supposed to have. And I'm like, a headshot, you know, all that stuff. I'm like, oh crap.
Right. So like, not only do I have to think about what I'm going to say, I have to do all this pre-work to add to that. Yeah, it can be stressful for sure. I can share too, if people are interested, some LinkedIn summary examples. This is just from the Career Contessa website. They had posted an article all about the LinkedIn summary and included some really good examples. So I can shoot over that link. I'll make a note. So Stevie, I'll send it to you after.
Thank you.
Just to get an idea. I'll touch really briefly too on Instagram. So, you know, if you're in a creative field, marketing, anything digital, you know, I think of, you know, particularly the wedding florist, that's something people want to see pictures of. Treat your Instagram like your resume, because people are for sure looking there. You know, I'm not talking about a personal page, or perhaps it is your personal page if you want to keep that, but make your feed a highlight, right? You want to pay attention to the aesthetic, and even if you aren't actively looking for work, this is a great way for passive opportunities to come along as well. Totally different topic, but if you are at all interested in social media tips and kind of navigating Instagram, I had a social media expert from LA on the podcast recently. So it's a really, really great episode about kind of maximizing audience and reach and discoverability on Instagram. So that episode her name is Brooke Berry. I'll put it in the chat. She's great. She's the head of social media for VidCon. VidCon is like the largest conference for digital content creators. So she's a pretty big job when it comes to social.
Awesome.
Any other questions kind of about the resume, LinkedIn?
I think
that kind of, you know, first initial step.
Yeah, just a question on photos in relation to LinkedIn too. I think that I've seen some people use some really, really, really old pictures of themselves, maybe some pictures that are like more social in nature. And so I guess that's my question of like, do people need to go out and get professional headshots done, or, you know, or is it just important to have something like clean and bright and like, I mean, what's your thought on that?
Yeah. I don't think you need to get a professional headshot done at all. I think it's so nice of companies to offer that for their employees for sure, but it's totally not necessary. I would say stand behind a blank wall or in front of a light source. And I mean, my God, the cameras now, they're like just an iPhone, any kind of camera will do. But yeah, like you said, light, bright, you know, shoulders up kind of thing.
I just remember
you don't have to even professional.
LinkedIn photo was of me at a sorority formal. And I remember
mine was like cropped at a bar.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I was out at a bar.
But I had like, it was spaghetti strap, and like I was like, oh, this looks cute. Like I was at the time, and guess what? Like I'm super embarrassed about that, and it still haunts me. Like it still comes back as like if you it shows up as like one of the lead pictures. So because it was on
really?
a long time, and so I guess it's just it's a I know it's cliche, but like I'm really passionate obviously about branding and like about personal branding, and have been thinking a lot about that. There's a certain level of like bringing your full self into the picture, but that there's also like a very real like your values and your future employer's values, like they have to align, and maybe they don't need to know your full life story like before you get hired. I mean, there's just like a little bit of marketing involved in yourself, and that's just the one like nuance that I would just provide for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I know, now you got me like thinking about my LinkedIn profile picture. I'm like, do I need a new one? Any other questions? Interviewing, anything, corresponding with recruiters? Any questions like that before we?
Well, we can talk about this later. The cover letter on LinkedIn. Some of them are requiring cover letters. So how long do you think that should be?
I hate cover letters. I have never read an entire cover letter in all of my years of recruiting. My company doesn't require them. I know some do. I would even venture to say, are the recruiters reading it? I don't know. That's up for debate. But if you have to submit, I would say like a couple paragraphs, really. I think in this situation, less is more. And I think you can probably make them pretty standard, kind of have your like template and then switch a couple things in and out depending on because I just can't imagine, and all my experience too with other recruiters, that no one puts much stock in that, because everyone knows you're going to Google cover letter template, or you know what I mean? Like it's not an accurate picture of who you are or what you can do. So I feel like they're so silly. I don't like them at all. But if some people require it, then keep it short. Good question about cover letters. Oh, I can't wait for them to go away, be a thing of the past. Okay, so no other questions about kind of landing a job, interviewing, getting things. Let's say, that you're happy with where you are currently, and we want to make the most of our situation on working from home, which is something that I've been doing. I've been working from home for the last 3 years. So this has not been much of a change for me. I've also managed teams remotely for the last 5. So, I mentioned I started my leadership with managing teams in Latin America. So my first team members were in Costa Rica and El Salvador. So I have a woman that works for me in El Salvador. I hired her 5 years ago. She's reported to me since 2015. I have never met her in person before. We have an incredibly close relationship. She has said numerous times that she's stayed at the company. We have retained her because of the relationship that her and I have, and the trust that we've built. So I think that it can add some, value for people who are maybe now, working away from people that their teams that they're used to seeing every day, or just, being outside of that boundary of work that we're used to. So when it comes to working from home, again, we've seen all the tips, right? Have a designated space, take breaks, shut your laptop when you're done. But I would love to hear from you guys if you have any, if you're just new to working from home and you found something that really works from you, or you're a seasoned vet and you swear by this tip. I'd like to see what you guys how you're making the most of working from home. I know for me, I set a really clear boundary on the weekends of like closing out my work email, getting rid of my Microsoft Teams thing. I just like get all the work stuff out of sight, out of mind.
I think for me, and Laura's, this was something that really stood out for me that I've changed recently from managing a team, is like the emotional intelligence piece, is like checking in on people personally. Like, cause I think with the working from home and now in this virtual environment, it's like, we're busier than ever. It's like faster, because you're like there, everybody is like locked in and you're getting, so like you forget about the emotional, the check-in and how are you doing? How, asking them about, you had a day off, how was that? Or, your birthday was the other day. And so for me, to really make it work and to keep people engaged and to keep myself engaged in like the human side of it, is to like be that EI, like check back in. So I did really take that away from that the other day, and I've implemented it, and it's been really helpful to like get the team on board, you know, keep the energy up as well. And for me too,
I think that's
like it keeps me like, it kind of keeps the social aspect alive as while virtually working. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, I have always with my, I have a team call once a week, and maybe I'll do individual one-on-one throughout the week, but always a team call. And I start every team call with, I call it good week, bad week. And so we go around to the team, and it can be about stuff that's happening at work, but it can be personal as well. It's like kind of up to them to decide. And I start the exercise with what's something good that's happened in my week, what's something bad that's happened in my week. And it really lets the team open up, become closer to each other, closer to me. And I always make sure that I am challenging myself to get really vulnerable with them, because I think then, that creates the space for them to do so too. And I don't have to say, everyone knows you work better as a team when you can relate to people on a very individual, personal level. So that's how I've kind of helped keep that relationship building open when we're literally, across the world from each other. It's a great call out. I know we're getting short on time too, so just gonna kind of quickly run through one of the other practices that I've put in place with managing remotely that has been really successful with me is trusting my team. And so I verbally tell them, from the start, that I trust that they're going to get their work done. I don't make strict rules around timing. I said, a clear expectation, you need to be available to your clients during their working hours. But beyond that, if you work better in the early morning, you work better in the later after, however it is that's going to set you up, do that. I will know if you're not getting your work done, right? So this is, you can't hide kind of thing, but I want you to be able to make your schedule work for you. And people so value the trust and the autonomy that gives them. And, many times I've had people on my team throughout the years, not take other positions or not move forward with another role because the time that they value, the independence, the autonomy is more important to them than a higher wage somewhere else. So it's been like a tremendous retention tool as well. So I think too, from the beginning of my teams, I've hired teams myself. I've inherited teams with acquisitions. I kind of have both sides. I put them first, and I create this space where for questions, we're not next to each other. We can't pop into a cubicle. Like, I need you can ask me a question whenever. You can ping me, you can text me, you can call me. And so to get that from the start, obviously it would be really easy for me to fire off a quick response or reply back with a text. And sometimes business, I have to do that. But whenever possible, I get on the phone with them. And, I either show them how to find something if they have a question, or I explain my thought process behind the question. So then it's so much more than saying, feel free to ask questions, I show them like, yes, this is a space we can have questions, and I want to talk through it. I want to have that dialogue. So hopefully that was helpful with, working remotely, managing remotely. I know that's not something that a lot of people are used to doing, but hopefully that will provide some value. Oh, we have something. I'm trying with my 8-year-old. Maybe doesn't work with an 8-year-old. I don't know. But yeah, kind of last closing remarks, questions. I'll be sure to send the LinkedIn summaries linked from Career Contessa over to Stevie. I can send the link to Brooke Berry's podcast episode 2 if you guys want to learn more about social media. It was super helpful, I think.
I think that
really good insight too.
The last piece that I would just add is that networking, for so many of us that are entrepreneurs, or this isn't just an entrepreneur thing, I think it's for everybody, networking doesn't necessarily have to stop. And I know that a lot of us really enjoy that part of our jobs. And I know that I found myself like severely dialing back, just trying to get my feet under me again. But I think that
Mhm.
creating space for that, if that's something that you're interested in, is something that I'm in June. That's when I'm going to start again. That's what I decided. Giving myself some space for May, going back to my Fridays being my networking day, and like giving myself some space to just have conversation and dialogue over this, but getting a pipeline together this month of people that I need to reconnect with that maybe I lost touch with through this whole thing, or new people.
Yeah.
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 I've been thinking about kind of prioritizing my networking and doing a little like work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
So I've been tapping into like my powerhouse networkers to
Yeah.
like squeeze some juice instead of doing kind of casting a wide net. I'm like, all right, let me get my biggest network fish, you know, like Stevie, you're one of them, right? I'm like, let me juice Stevie. She knows so many good people. Let me, you know, there's someone else I have, like, I know they know a ton. So in this space of like trying to give myself some more time, because like networking can really get, it's fun. And so you want to do it, but it takes up a lot of time and your own energy resources. So I'm like, let me just like get my cash cows a little bit kind of thing. And then, you know, I can look at widening the net when I have some more bandwidth.
Yeah. Hey, Stevie, the one thing I'd add on to what you and Christy both said is that for some people who have always worked in an office place and now are working from home, when I had retired, I couldn't believe, it was almost like grief. I couldn't believe how much I missed my coworkers. And the one thing I would just really suggest is that I had to find like, who was my new tribe? You know, it's like I really needed a tribe of girlfriends and coworkers and professional coaches and other people, because my tribe had always been my entire team around me, you know, for years and years. So some of that you can definitely get from networking, like I have clearly through WISE, but also whether you have members of your team you need to reach out to, whether it's girlfriends, whether it's new friends, but to notice that you really do need to remind yourself of all the relationships that are important to you and take time for those relationships. You know, Alexis, I always go back to what, you know, that I love teaching empathy and everything about empathy and realizing that everybody has a story. You know, you have no idea when you're looking at people what their story is, you know, so to make sure how important it is to reach out and connect to others.
Yeah, definitely. That's great.
Well, I know we are at time, which makes me very sad because I feel like I have so many things that I would love to, like, so many other questions. So I think that this definitely, I wanted to make sure that you guys got a, there we go. That's some of her information there. It is the, Krissy, she leads the What the Fit podcast. So make sure that you follow that on Instagram. We will make sure that we have that available for everybody in the notes as well. And I would say that on her link tree, you can find a link, whether you listen on Spotify or Apple. But it is just like, I just love your podcast because it's so beyond just fitness. Like it really is about that whole self-wellness. And we talk about, you know, whenever I'm on, like we end up talking like very little about working out. Like it's always about other things. Yeah. So
right. Working out is one small piece of the big puzzle.
So. I hope you accept my offer to come back on again and do a part 2 to this, because I think that we're just going to have so many additional questions. And with Loris, who, you know, is kind of being our executive coach in residence in combination with like your knowledge and expertise in this space, gosh, I just like think it'd be amazing. So so stay tuned.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll work on part 2, but Krissy, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you. This was a highlight of my week. I was looking forward to this all week, so I appreciate everyone.
Oh my gosh, well, that means a lot to me. Thank you. And we're really excited because we will pick back up on Monday at 3 p.m. We will have Rachel DeRocher. She will be talking about the art of gathering and about social wellness and the importance of a tribe, especially as we are in social distancing. And even though we're coming out of that, I think it's about how to create more meaningful relationships and through gratitude, how we can really start to embrace that. And then we will follow that up with Molly Carr, speaking about spiritual wellness and a little bit about kind of finding your purpose and what that looks like, you know, embracing arts and culture and that aren't necessarily yours. And then ending the week next week with Abby Allen, who's going to be leading us through mindfulness in nature. So there's a whole lot going on. Thank you so much for joining today. Again, Krissy, can't thank you enough. And thank you everybody for your
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your week and have a wonderful day. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.